finna give your ass the game, man. You know I break it down. Come on, man, you know it's Bain.
Yo, what's good, everybody? Welcome back to Bain Break It Down Forex. It's your boy Big Bain in this thing, and you guys guessed it. Another week, another opportunity for us to make some money in the Forex market. So let's get right to it. All right. Boom. Over on the dollar, guys. I'm still expecting that rise. All right. We got the break of this high. We made the new high, pull back all the way into our key point of interest right here. And if we go to the 4 hour, we'll see that we do have respect at that demand level. So again, I just expect the dollar to begin to rise, going to break above this high. So I'm bullish on the dollar. All right, moving over to the JPY. Same with the JPY. Well, not initially bullish, but we're going to push down and sweep this engineered liquidity, tap into demand before we get the rise. So ultimately, what's going to happen first is the JPY is going to fall. So for that reason, guys, I'm bearish on the JPY index, as again, I expect it to give us a sweep of liquidity, tap into demand, and then take off to the upside. So bearish on JPY. All right, over to dollar, guys. We have a very nice clean setup to take a sell on the dollar to the downside for 134 pips. All right. Bearish on dollar, euro dollar, same exact thing, except we may get the drop right where we have price right now, but I do expect it to rise up a little higher before we get that drop. So be careful of that, extra little push up on EU before we get the drop. But guys, my team is already in for that sell, and we're looking to make roughly 328 pips off of that. So again, you guys can catch it from where it is now to this low for just 100 pips. But I do believe because the dollar is super bullish, we're going to get a major push down on EU. All right. So you clock over 300 pips on this pair. All right. So bearish on EU. All right. GU consolidated for a good bit. But again, I still believe we're going to get that push down to this level of demand. All right. So I'm bearish on GU. All right. Over to New Zealand dollar. Again, same issue with New Zealand dollar. We're heading up to a nice supply area where we're going to have a great selling opportunity from. So just look for that additional push up on New Zealand dollar. And then from there, guys, we'll be falling to the low for about 114 pips. All right. Bullish on New Zealand dollar. Okay. Over to dollar CAD. And we broke the high, made the new high. We've pulled back, and now we're at our key demand area. All right. So we definitely want to see more bulls show up on this, on the lower time frame here, where you can kind of see the last time we broke a low was from, this high coming down, breaking this low. So technically we need to get above this high before we're bullish again. But I would like to take my chances buying, as I can see that price has created some equal lows here, which we may get a sweep of those before we go to do the rise. So watch out for that sweep before we push up on the dollar CAD. I'm bullish on dollar CAD. All right. Moving over to dollar CHF. Same kind of situation, guys. I do expect a little bit of a drop down to demand before we get that rise, taking us above the previous high on dollar CHF. I'm bullish. All right. Dollar JPY. Also bullish. All right. So again, with what I mentioned about the JPY index falling, that will cause a pair like UJ to rise. All right. So bullish on UJ. Watch out for just a little bit of a deeper push into demand before we get that rise up. But ultimately for the week, we should see a rise on dollar JPY. All right. Bullish. Over to pound odd. And now we are just, kind of sweeping this liquidity, but really tapping into a key area that I believe we will bounce from, potentially getting up to the supply area before we fall again. So just at the moment, because we're low on pound odd, guys, I'm expecting the rise up to supply before we get the drop. So bullish initially to supply, and then from there, guys, we should see a nice drop back down to grab this liquidity that you guys see here on pound odd. All right. I am bullish for now. All right. Over to pound CAD, I'm still bearish. All right. My team caught 171 pips from last week. We have a nice break to where we pull back to the area that we broke, as well as a trend line giving us confluence. All right. A downtrend line giving us confluence that we should continue falling. All right, guys, and we have plenty of room to the downside to do just that. This is a 1 to almost 6 risk to reward, 33 pips for 199. Bearish on pound CAD. All right, over to pound CHF. And this is very unique because we've broken the high, we made the new high, all the pullback has begun, but you can see engineered liquidity built up in this area, guys. So I do expect price to rise up, tap into supply before we get the drop down. So this is going to be a tricky one with it potentially doing that, right? It may not, right? We may respect this supply level that broke this low, right? And we may just get into here and fall. So we may never get that deep pullback into supply. Either way, I do expect some sort of push up first before we get the drop on pound CHF. Just know that if we get that push up to the supply level, this is going to be a great opportunity to take the sell in that regard, because liquidity would have already been swept. All right. So for pound CHF, you're looking at a good 187 pips to the downside this week if we can catch it. All right. So bearish, bullish initially, but then overall bearish on pound CHF. Right, pound JPY, it still looks bearish, all right, but with the JPY index falling, that will typically cause the GJ to rise, all right. So I'm looking at one more push up to the high before a potential fall, but we may just continue rising because that's what GJ has shown us it wants to do previously, breaking the high, making the new high. All of this was a pullback to our key area, which was a demand zone right here that we've respected so far, so we can continue to rise out of here on GJ. And for that reason, guys, I'm going to be bullish on GJ coming out the gate. All right, moving over to pound New Zealand, and very nice setup here on pound New Zealand. Broke the high, made the new high, pull back to our key area, guys, and the bulls have shown up, and I expect price to continue rising on pound New Zealand, possibly get in here for a stop, but we can also probably reach the very, very top. All right, let's rewind that back. We can probably get all the way to the top at 378 pips, but we're aiming for that first swing for 250. Right, not bad. Very good setup on pound New Zealand. All right, moving over to silver. All right, and silver just broke this high, so we got to get this correct now. All right, let me adjust. You guys will see the possibility on silver. All right, there you have it. Break of the high, making the new high. So the pullback is expected, okay? And with that, we can probably get a drop down to this particular low. All right, even though it is still looking bullish at the moment, if the dollar rises, I would expect silver to give us a drop down to this demand area. All right, guys, so I am bearish on silver. Gold, all right, gold just took out this high and it tapped into this previous high. So it should be, time for it to begin to look for a drop. All right, and we need to get low to really kind of see what we have. All right, so basically, guys, we need a break below 34 or 3441, right, before we get into our sell. Until then, we are still bullish on gold and it can continue to rise. So do not take a sell just yet, all right, from this price point, because it is unconfirmed that it actually wants to drop. All right, it is still breaking highs, making new higher highs. This is now our higher low, so we can go to make the next higher high. All right, so gold is still bullish. Definitely want to wait until it breaks below this higher low before we look for our selling opportunities. All right, so for now, bullish on gold, but please understand, if we get that break below here, below this higher low, I will be bearish on gold. All right, so that's what we have for gold, bullish. All right, moving over to natural gas. And if you guys caught my weekly watch list last week, I told you the buy on NAS was on the way, and kaboom. All right, and it's still rising, and because of that, we just broke this high right here. So again, we got to get things right. This is now our low. right? Get rid of our trend line. Okay, this is no longer supply. And there you pretty much have it. All right, we do see a bit of a resistance level here. All right, that we may respect. When we get there, we may sweep that liquidity and then begin to drop. But because we had a nice rise all of last week and we're heading into resistance, I do expect the drop now on natural gas, coming back down, potentially filling this imbalance that we see sitting right above this demand area. All right, guys. So bearish on natural gas, but just as a potential pullback to that area. All right. And from here, we're going to probably rise on natural gas once again, but initially bearish. All right. Moving over to crude oil, and man, it has been stalling and stalling from making its way to the top, but I'm still bullish on crude oil. Just needed to finally bust a move, and we'll get grooving. But for now, if we may get a drop back down to this demand before we rise, or we may just continue to take off as the market opens on oil. But I'm still bullish on oil. All right, moving over to SPY. Man, oh man, oh man, what a time we had last week. Me and the team, we caught the drop from the top, all right, on SPY, and we caught 55 points to the downside. It did retrace back later that day, and it's getting to our supply area, and we can't wait, all right? So this is a 4-hour, looking at it on the 2-hour, and let's go 1, all right? More details. You guys can see that by the time we reach the supply area, guys, we're going to have another selling opportunity on this rising wedge, all right, which is a bearish reversal pattern, and it's already given us the break of the low. It's giving us the pullback, guys. It's going to be prime time, all right? SPY is definitely one of those setups that you do not want to miss this week for the drop, especially with the dollar looking extremely bullish. I am bearish on SPY, guys, looking to catch 184 points on it, maybe more, all right? But very, very good setup on SPY. Please try not to miss out, all right? Moving over to natural gas, same exact thing that SPY gave us, right? We sold it from the top. My team caught over 291 points on NAS, all right? And now, once again, as the week ended, we started to retrace back, okay? So we're most likely going to go back to the high of this rising wedge, and then we'll fall from there, okay? You can see a little bit of a supply area right in the mix, right about here, okay? So that may be where we retrace to before we get the drop to the bottom. All right, guys, giving us over 696 points to the downside, maybe even more, just depending on, how things go. But guys, very nice setup, and it's very beautiful on NAS. Take advantage. Do not miss out. All right. Last but not least, US 30. And we've already got our retracement, all right, pulling all the way back up to the supply area. All right. So if we take a look at it on the 1 hour, you might see, yep, there is the details that we need. We fill this fair value gap. And here is our trend line that's no longer really needed. Okay. But we can see that we had the change of character to the downside. Pull back, we drop. All right, my team did sell it, and we're still in it. But for right now, it decided that I was going to go a little bit higher, filling in that supply a little deeper. And now we should get the drop coming back down, where I expected to get to this level of consolidation that we had previously. Guys, we're talking over 1,000 points, or just about 1,000 points on that drop. So US 30, I'm bearish, and I hope you guys don't miss out, all right? Another note, this week I will be going live, guys, at 8 a.m. on Tuesday and Monday and Tuesday, all right? We do have news on Tuesday. So if you want to really learn how to do this live, come and check me out, and set your notification bells for that, all right? Don't forget to also like and subscribe, all right? Tell a friend to hop on in and rock with me, all right? We really get to taking advantage of the market by understanding how to do so, all right? So if you're looking for that, come and get with me, all right? ForexWithBain.com, and the rest will be history, all right? But in the meantime, in between time, let's get it, and see you guys later, all right? Peace.
money, wanna get paid, master Forex, like a sensei, then you know you gotta come and swing my way. And if you wanna fast forward, hit replay.